and leads the way. Off the beaten track to find solutions.
Sunrises in the African bush are one of this world's little pleasures. But for the survivors of Day 2 of the Toyota Kalahari Botswana 1000 desert race, there were other matters to consider. A tough route and more water than you would expect on a desert race had taken their toll, and only 24 of the original 58 starters were still running.
Ahead of the survivors were another punishing 500 kilometers of thorn trees, sand, mud and water. And there was little doubt there were going to be more casualties before the finish back in Gaborone. Crews like production vehicle category leaders Duncan Foss and Rolf Pitchford were in a comfort zone. But among the special vehicles, 4 cars within 2 minutes of each other was a recipe for drama. Where Foss was concerned, there was still room for caution.
You don't need too much pace, but you can't afford to relax too much because you break your rhythm then. So we just got to go at a good pace, try and not go off the road, keep it neat and tidy, keep it in the tracks, and then just watch closer to Gaborone. There's a lot of water on the track, and we've got to make sure we don't get stuck. That's our biggest challenge today, is not to get stuck in those river crossings and those marshes closer to Gaborone.
Last year's winner Shamir Varayawa was fighting the flu.
What I'm looking forward to today is I think we have a big dice, myself, Evan and Jeremy. I mean, we are within 1 minute 3 cars, so it's going to be a heavy dice till halfway, I think, and maybe to the end as well.
Former quad racer Jimmy Zahus and Stefan Kutsia were the surprise package of the race so far in the Mountain Dew Porter. Zahus had spent a sleepless night.
Couldn't sleep last night at all. I don't know. Hopefully it'll go away once we start going, but I'm actually quite nervous.
Former desert race winner Kali Solvat was looking forward to a good day, but had his own concerns.
Well, first of all, this first loop is dry. That's a plus point. It's not... in the morning it's quite cold, so luckily that's dry. We're a little bit behind on time. We didn't have major problems, but the car is losing a bit of power on the engine, so we'll have to take it slow till the DSP. We'll see if we get there, and then from there it's all the way home to Game City, hopefully.
Yeah, I think we're gonna give it all this morning and try and close the gap up to Duncan and chase him to the finish. Whether or not we can do it will be wait to be seen.
The Atlas Copco Toyota Hilux had overnight been restored to near showroom condition, but Gary Berthold was in no doubt about what lay ahead.
Yeah, look, it's going to be a very tough one. If it's anything like yesterday, it's going to be a treacherous, tough event going home today. It's another whole 500 Ks. Going to have to keep our head cool and really make sure that we take this baby home today.
For Norwegian Ivar Tollefsen, who has been on climbing expeditions to Antarctica, the agenda included one very important item.
Don't get stuck in a mud hole. I think that's the big thing where you can sit for hours. And then it's, I have to try to gain 13 minutes on Gary Berthold to get some extra points for the championship.
There were also mechanical and other concerns for Cape Crew, Derek Du Toit and Ian Pienaar, who were the overnight Class B leaders.
Try and conserve the vehicle. We're a bit worried about it. Our gearbox doesn't sound that great, but obviously the time is important. I think there's only 24 cars in this morning, and we have, I think, about 10 of them behind us. So if we get stuck, hopefully there will be somebody to help us. If not, we have to bribe somebody to push us. So no, we're just going to conserve the car and hope it can bring it through.
But for overnight leader Evan Hutchison, there wasn't a care in the world.
No, good, huh? We're ready for another beautiful day out in the desert. Batteries are recharged. I'm hoping my arms will start working before the race starts. No, we're positive. We're going to have a good day.
The first car away on a chilly morning was the Donaldson Nissan Navara of Duncan Foss and Rolf Pitchford. And with a huge lead in the bag, they already had one hand on the winner's trophy. For Foss, it would be his 3rd desert race win in a row, and after missing the last 2 Botswana races through overseas commitments, it would be a special occasion for Pitchford. His overseas commitments also cost Pitchford the opportunity of 2 South African co-driver championships.
With a huge lead, the experienced Foss and Pitchford were unlikely to take any chances, and you could take poison on the fact that they were well aware of the situation behind them in the special vehicle category, where an almighty scrap was likely to develop. Jimmy Zahus and Stefan Kutsia were only 35 seconds behind overnight leaders Hutchison and Bergman, with Shamir Varayawa and Siegfried Rousseau a further 15 seconds in arrears.
The reigning SA champions, Cully and Quinton Sulwald, were also still in the frame, and Nick and Ryan Harper would not have shelled thoughts of sneaking a win in the Atlas Copco bat. The Day 2 sortie into a mud hole cost Mike Whitehouse and Matthew Carlson dear, and the Regent Racing crew had plenty of time to make up. Whitehouse and Carlson had recovered well after losing 20 minutes on Day 2, but they also had to be wary of Naeem Musaji and Mohammed Mulston, who were only 5 minutes behind in the tyre rack Jimco.
The Chris Visser Yapi Badenhorst RFS Toyota Hilux was still looking beaten and battered, with Badenhorst another of the off-road fraternity's Comrades Marathon veterans. Behind the RFS Toyota, brothers David and Gary White had a huge lead in Class P, but would have Christian de Plooy and Henk Janssen van Vieren on their tails in the second RFS Toyota Hilux. There was no doubt they would come under early attack from Anthony Taylor and Robin Houghton in the factory Castor Toyota Hilux, while Pikkie Labuschagne and Rikus Erasmus had a handy lead in Class E. Derek Tutu and Ian Pienaar in the same boat in Class B, but would be sure to come under pressure from local Botswana hero Atang Makgenene and Zimbabwean Philip Archinal in the BE Mobile Porter.
The hard luck story of the morning belonged to Mickelin XL Toyota crew, the De Brains. They discovered the Hilux had overnight somehow lost its power steering.
It doesn't seem to be our bad luck would stop. I just keep on continue. Yesterday we had a CV joint problem and we managed to fix that on the road. And we came in good, and fortunately this morning when we started the vehicle there wasn't any power steering. So we just busy replacing the steering rack. I think we will have a 30-minute start behind the other guys, but at least we will start today and give it the help.
While the De Brains were kicking their heels in frustration back at the restart, production vehicle leaders Duncan Foss and Ralph Pitchford have been quickly closed down by special vehicle leaders Evan Hunterson and Achim Bergman, who had the bit between their teeth in the Motorrad Revo 1 4x4.
Spectacular race cam footage from the Motorrad car shows that without cooperation from the car ahead, overtaking in a tunnel of thorn trees and bushes was either impossible or carried a high risk factor.
Not wanting to get caught up in a special vehicle war, the Nissan crew took the first opportunity to move over, and they let the Motorrad car get ahead of them.
Now leading the special vehicle and production vehicle categories were two crews in contrasting situations. One team were in a comfort zone and the other under severe pressure.
The team under pressure was the Motorrad pair of Evan Hutchison and Achim Bergman in the Motorrad Revo 1 entry. Shamir Variawa and Siegfried Rousseau had managed to get past Jimmy Zaas and Stefan Kutsia and were also allowed through by Duncan Foss and Ralph Pitchford. The expected battle between the special vehicle frontrunners was starting to develop, with Zaas and Kutsia still very much a part of the mix, although the gap between the three lead cars had grown to over 2 minutes.
As expected, the pace up front in the special vehicle category was hectic, and Cully and Quinton Sulwald had dropped to more than 3.5 minutes off the leading pace. The Sulwald Racing Bat was being chased by Nick and Ryan Harper, who had lost time when a loose wheel necessitated hasty repairs. Mike Whitehouse and Matthew Carlson were now only around 2.5 minutes behind the Atlas Copco car, and putting together another solid performance in the Regent Racing Bat.
The big movers early on the final day were Anthony Taylor and Robin Houghton in the Castor Toyota Hilux and Atang Makgenene and Philip Archinal in the BE Mobile Porter. The factory Toyota crew had moved ahead of both the RFS Toyota entries, and Makgenene and Archinal had also picked up places. Christian de Plooy and Henk Janssen van Vieren were putting in an impressive display in the RFS Toyota Hilux, and in their best performance of the year, Class B leaders David and Gary White again looked in fine fettle in the Rubicon Bat.
Class B leaders Derek Du Toit and Ian Pienaar were being closed down by Ivar Tollefsen and Quinn Evans in the Donaldson Nissan Navara. And there were the makings of a little cameo performance with Tollefsen and Evans, the Atlas Copco Toyota Hilux of Gary Berthold and Dani Stassen, and the worse for wear RFS Toyota Hilux of Chris Visser and Yapi Badenhorst looking to upstage each other.
The KwaZulu-Natal father and son crew of Glenn and Rob Gibson had shown plenty of perseverance and determination in the Gibson Racing Bat and were one of only 2 crews left running in Class P. Behind the Gibsons, former SA champion Terence Marsh and Peter Groenewald were also showing plenty of perseverance in the Regent Racing Nissan Navara. When they were caught by Naheem Mosaji and Mohammed Molson in the Tyrak Jimco, the experienced Marsh politely moved over to let the Limpopo-based crew go right past.
A series of little niggles had slowed the Mosaji Milston car, and they were on a mission to make up time.
Class E leaders Pikkie Labuschagne and Rikus Erasmus were looking comfortable when they went past a small pocket of spectators. They were leading 4x4 Megaworld Toyota teammates and championship leaders Dion Venter and Ian Palmer, who were after their 3rd win of the year. Reigning Class E champions Yanni Visser and York Leroux were looking in good shape and had experience going for them. The Class D ranks had been slowly whittled away, and brothers Johan and Werner Horn now found themselves leading the category in the Malalan Toyota Land Cruiser. Behind them, Hichu and Jaap de Bruin had finally got going in the Micra and Excel Toyota Hilux and were pushing as hard as they could to make up for lost time.
At the tail end of the field, Heinz Stumper and Hendrik van der Linde were also headed for retirement, leaving only the Horn brothers running in Class D.
At the front of the field, Evan Hutchison and Achim Bergman gave a demonstration of how the slightest lapse in concentration on the desert race can end in near disaster. An encounter with a large bush cost them valuable seconds in what was turning into a touch-and-go battle with Shamir Varayawa and Siegfried Rousseau in the total porter. Last year's winners were fairly racing along and held a slight advantage when the route opened up.
Runaway production vehicle leaders Duncan Foss and Rolf Pitchford were still in complete control of matters in the Donaldson Nissan Navara. They had again settled into a rhythm, and their only worry was a mechanical breakdown.
Gully and Quentin Silwart had fallen by the wayside, and the Atlas Copco Batter former winners Nick and Ryan Harper had moved into 3rd place in the special vehicle category. The Harpers were comfortably ahead of Mike Whitehouse and Matthew Carlson in the Regent Racing Bat, but all it needs to drop a place or two is a single puncture. There were sections of the route that opened up beautifully, and crews could crank up the speed.
The next target for crews was the final designated service point, and by now Anthony Taylor and Robin Houghton were firmly entrenched in 2nd place in the production vehicle category. The factory Castrol Toyota crew was still running ahead of Chris Visser and Jaapie Badenhorst in the battered RFS Toyota Hilux, still sounding more than healthy. Visser and Badenhorst were now being chased by Atang Machagenene and Philip Arsenal, who had moved into the top 5 in the special vehicle category.
In what was by far their best ever performance, the impressive Christian de Plooy and Henk Janssen van Vuren were still looking good in the 2nd RFS Toyota Hilux. The Pretoria pair were in their 1st season in the Premier SP class, but were handling the situation like seasoned veterans. Gary Berthold and Dani Stassen still had hopes of a podium finish in the Atlas Copco Toyota Hilux. And behind them, Class P leaders David and Gary White in the Ruricon Bat had a comfortable lead over Glenn and Rob Gibson in the Class P battle.
Former SA champion Terence Marsh is a refugee from the special vehicle category, where he won the 2005 championship with brother-in-law Mike Whitehouse. Now teamed up with Peter Groenewald in the ex-Duncan Foss Regent Racing Nissan Navara, the pair were making up ground and again demonstrating a consistent ability to finish events.
A total of 6 Class B cars started the race, and by mid-morning on day 2, only Derek de Tooy and Ian Pienaar were running in the Orange Tree Bat. Behind de Tooy and Pienaar, the 4x4 Megaworld pair of Dion Venter and Ian Palmer had taken over the Class E lead from teammates Pikkie Labuschagne and Rikus Erasmus, who were right on the heels of Glenn and Rob Gibson.
With their hopes of catching the crews ahead of them starting to fade, Ivar Tollefsen and Quinn Evans were now concentrating on getting the Donaldson-Nissan Navara safely to the finish in Gaborone. Valuable championship points now topped their agenda. It was much the same for current Class E champions Jannie Visser and Joks Leroux, while Johan and Werner Horn now had a lock on Class D in the healthy-sounding Malalan Toyota Land Cruiser.
Limpopo-based Naheem Mossaji and Mohammed Molson had lost ground during the morning, and with a designated service point in sight, were now falling into the clutches of Hichu and Jaap de Bruin, who were still charging hard after their very late start.
First into the DSP were Evan Hutchinson and Achim Bergman, who was still on track for win number 4.
A terrific battle had developed between Hutchison and Bergman and Shamir Varayawa with Siegfried Rousseau, with the two crews swapping the lead during the course of the morning.
Yeah, we've got a nice tussle with Shamir. You know, we knew we were going to battle on this top loop because there's a whole lot of long straights. We don't have any top end. So we pushed this morning, we got into the lead, and we tried to push as hard as we could to make as much gap as we could. But when we got into those straights, he came up behind us and gave us a nerve. I don't think his screen was working. So he got past us, and then we got back into the tight stuff. We got back past him again, you know. There's quite a long straight coming back in, so he's caught route up again. But I think from here going home, there aren't too many long straights, so it should be in our favour. We'll have to wait and see. Yeah.
On the final run for the finish at Gaborone, the pressure was on for Hutchinson and Bergman and Variawa and Rousseau.
We were racing for about 150 k's. We got past the Nissan, and eventually we got past Evan, and I think about 10 k's from here, he got past us again. You know, you're tight, twisty, loose gravel, so he got past us there. But I think he'll pull us on the way home because it's more loose and more flat going home. So we'll try. We're just going to keep our pressure here on him, see what happens.
The Foss and Pitchford Nissan was starting to show a few battle scars, but for the crew, it had been a morning with no major problems.
Ralph, how's your morning been?
Yeah, it's been pretty good. It's extremely soft. You know, yesterday when we did the routes, we were the first car on the road and the sand was nice and hard. And this morning, it's a totally different story. We're really battling to pull top gear, and the space frames have just ridden away from us. So we're just keeping it together and trying to get to the end in one piece.
The solid as ever Atlas Copco back pair of Nick and Ryan Harper were third in the special vehicle category at the DSP, but it picked up a problem here and there.
One wheel was, we forgot to tighten it yesterday when we put it on, so about 2 k's out, the wheel came loose, and we had to stop and put a new wheel on because it damaged the wheel, if you look at it there.
Over in the Castrol Toyota camp, the factory crew of Anthony Taylor and Robin Houghton were being forced to revise their game plan for the final leg of the race, the Gaborone.
Yeah, we really went for it this morning. We knew we had to get part 2 RFS Hiluxes quite early, so we got both of them by 40 k's. Gave it a hard push. We're showing a little bit no odos and fourth gears jamming a bit. So we sort of decided to just pick Duncan at this stage, and we got the tricky bits coming up. So we've kept him at about half an hour, and let's see what happens. You know, we haven't quite got the pace. We're going to have to risk too much to catch him. So I think we'll hold station for now.
Local hero Atang Makhakanene and Philip Arsenal were now firmly entrenched in the top 5, with Atang happy with their progress through the morning.
Everything seems to be working well. The package seems to be coming together finally.
No problems with the vehicle?
No problems. Only now I got a knocking sound, and I felt like I was losing a bit of suspension.
Zimbabwe rally navigator Philip Archinal was having his first ever outing in an off-road car, but was standing up well.
He's doing very well, eh? I'm happy with him. I can't complain. I'm the only one who needs to get the car home now.
The deployed Van Vieren RFS Toyota Hilux was also starting to show the battle scars of a tough race, but the crew reported a morning free of any trouble.
It's been tough out there. The route's really rough, rutted from yesterday. But other than that, the route's like nice and open, so we can go a bit faster. But we had no trouble, so yeah, good.
Vehicle, all okay with the vehicle?
Yeah, I think mechanically, I don't know, nothing's wrong. I can't feel anything with the car, so I think we're right, yeah.
At DSP, Foss and Pitchford still led by over half an hour, with Marsh and Groenewald into the top 5. 3 Class E cars also featured in the top 10.
On the special vehicle front, only 20 seconds separated Hutchinson and Bergman from the Variawa Rousseau vehicle, and the race to the finish was on. By this stage, only 8 space frame vehicles were still running.
Vehicle and asset finance from